So the next speaker is Deirdre Somers, who is the chair of our board. And as you know, we take governance very seriously in this organisation. The board are made up of, we've got our clinical lead and vice clinical lead, but we've also got a suite of people from different backgrounds and different professional experiences. And you're going to hear about Deirdre's a little bit here today. We're so proud to have her as our chair, and we're so lucky. So I'm going to hand it over to Deirdre now. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I think it's a very peculiar form of torment to put probably the only non-clinician or non-medical background person on the stage just after Maeve Lowry. And I am constantly humbled by the people that I've met in my journey with Cancer Trials Ireland, and I continue to be humbled. I start with an apology, which is I am not a clinician. I don't come from a medical background. I will use the wrong terminology. I make no apologies for that, even though I am apologising in advance, but I'm just putting this in context. The little talk, and it's only going to be 5 minutes, hopefully, that I'm going to give you is at a completely lower level than Maeve's here, and that is to give you a little bit of a context and an insight into how we govern the board of Cancer Trials Ireland, what our plans are, what our priorities are. It is an honour and a pleasure for me to chair this board, chair this incredible organisation, and to work with the most passionate, committed and talented management team that I have had the pleasure of working with in my entire career. The board, just to give you a bit of a background, span commercial, medical, research, stakeholder, legal and accountancy. I think it's hugely important, given the complexities of running any charitable organisation in the environment in Ireland at the moment, that those that do are unburdened from the requirements to ensure compliance and all of the stewardship obligations and necessary stewardship obligations for any charity. We are gifted with having a diversity of views and an extraordinary backlog of experience from every perspective. And I have to say, as a non-medic and someone who would never have been, I don't come from a medical family or anything of that nature, this was so completely new to me. And I think, though, that the observations that hopefully I'll share with you a little bit come from that rather than naive objective perspective. And I'm a bit of a blunt force instrument as a result, and Evelyn will know it's the why the hell not kind of conversations that we have. The Cancer Trials Ireland is a multi-stakeholder environment. It has a complexity. You saw the stakeholder environment in Evelyn's slide earlier. It only works if all of the cogs of the wheel are in harmony with one another and feel that it is important to work together. And that type of multi-stakeholder environment is very complex because it's like having spinning dishes. You have to keep them all going at the same time, otherwise they'll start falling down one after the other. And it's really important, therefore, that no one part of that stakeholder base is getting all of the oxygen. Having said that, it is very important that everyone is sharing the oxygen. So Evelyn has gone through the basic kind of strategic pillars within which we operate, but we also operate on an extremely tight and funding schedule and very, very limited resources. And therefore, it's really important that we are very clear on our short-term goals. Before I go into that, though, I was at a governance conference. It's my new world. I go to governance conferences where a very esteemed chairman of a board said, you know, a board has one job and one job only, and that is to select the chief executive. And I think it's a little bit simplistic, but I would like to think that we've done a really good job. So I am absolutely thrilled to have Evelyn back. You were much missed, and the passion and the commitment that Evelyn brings to this organisation is beyond comprehension. Angela, I can only thank you for stepping up. Angela was literally taking her first breath when we got this news, and I think it says extraordinary things to her resilience and her value as a leader, that everything was done so well in Evelyn's absence. So thank you for everyone. The other two jobs of a board is to define the strategy and to make sure that the organisation is run on an ethical, transparent and sustainable way. So with that second objective in mind, and given the restrictions that we have on resources, it is super important that we are very clear year on year where we are going to dedicate those resources. So we had a very important offsite in January. It was very interesting to me to observe it. We did the typical kind of corporate thing. We broke people up into think tanks. We had themes. The overriding theme is how can we reduce time to first patient, because that was the most fundamental thing we were getting back from all of our stakeholder group. We split everybody up into clinician engagement, patients, funding, attracting trials and operational effectiveness. We put them all in different little parts of the room, gave them a flip chart. It was all very corporate and lovely, and everybody came back and we got a download. And every single one of those little working groups came back with GDPR. GDPR and the way in which Ireland interprets GDPR and implements GDPR increases time to first patient, reduces the attractiveness of Ireland for trials, increases the costs of trials, reduces our ability to obtain new funding sources, it reduces the clinician incentive and engagement, and increases the challenges and the difficulties for patients to participate on trials. What the hell are we doing? I worked for many years in a securities market environment with one document, a prospectus. You can sell shares throughout the entirety of the European Union. One document. And that document can be produced in 2-3 months. And that's to sell shares. Why is it impossible for us in one island to have one approach that gives us approval to deal with data across the island of Ireland? It is beyond my comprehension that the tail is wagging the biggest dog in cancer care in this country. So therefore, we have made this our strategic priority for the first year. Reducing time to first patient, we just cannot do it unless we solve GDPR. It is inconceivable that this island is self-damaging for patients at their most vulnerable stage in their cancer care. After that, now I've done my rant. Angela will go through in more practical terms what we're intending to do about that. But it is very much an operational focus, and it may seem quite micro, but literally everything else becomes subsidiary because it is one of the biggest roadblocks. Thereafter, another objective of ours to reduce time to first patient is to implement lean and to take control of what we control ourselves, and to make sure that we are internally as an organisation operating with as little operational friction as we possibly can. Thereafter, we have to find new sources of funding. I see Avril has joined us here. I cannot thank the Cancer Society more. They shore up the rather meagre HRB grant that we have on an annual basis. Without them, academic research and investigator-led trials would simply not happen on this island, and I commend them hugely. We sit in Ireland in the middle of one of the biggest clusters of pharmaceutical companies in Europe, and yet we do not leverage them for the domestic research our clinical trial agenda. Other countries do. I appreciate there are differences in the type of pharmaceutical activity that is happening in places like Switzerland, etc. But you talk to countries like Switzerland, and they see it as absolutely necessary for those pharmaceutical companies that benefit from the positioning in their country to participate in the clinical trial agenda of their country. And that is something that we would very much like to start engaging in and seeing what, if anything, we can do to take advantage of the fact that we have a huge pharmaceutical community in Ireland. The secret sauce of clinical trials is the clinicians. And in Ireland, it is a very, very particular secret sauce. We have clinicians that have been trained internationally, that have international credibility, that have international networks, that come back to Ireland with all of the passion, the commitment, and the international perspective that type of training and that type of experience can give, to ensure that they are engaged, incentivized, valued, visible, and supported is a huge part of what Cancer Trials is all about. And without that, we really do not have our unique selling proposition. We have now got a new generation of oncologists that have come to this island that are engaged in research, are really, really enthusiastic. They are going to ultimately replace that generation of clinicians who founded Cancer Trials Ireland, who created this network, who created everything that we're talking about today. And it is really important that Cancer Trials Ireland remains relevant and supportive of those clinicians as we move forward. And then finally, I suppose we decided that really one thing that we're really bad at is communicating our value. Part of the reason I'm standing here today is we're going to start addressing that. We need to start telling people what we do, why we do it, and why it's important to everyone across the stakeholder sector. That's government, that's media, that's public sector, that's pharma, that's clinicians, and that's researchers. And that's hugely important for us. And I just want to finish, I suppose, with something that I think is really important. Why are we all here today? The reason I joined the board and then ultimately became chair of Cancer Trials Ireland is I had a absolutely gorgeous sister-in-law called Kay, and Kay got 10 years because of Cancer Trials. 10 years, she would never have that. 10 years to see her children become adults, 10 years to say her goodbyes, 10 years to have the experiences that everybody should have in life. And therefore, that is why this is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. Aren't we very lucky to have someone with such passion? But obviously, like everyone in this room, we are all driven by, and we all think of Kay often and talk about, because it's a really strong example of that time that we get. But going back to the presentation, I think Deirdre's experience in the finance sector is just wonderful right now, because it tells a story about this country. And what we tend to prioritise in law, and there are, it's a high level that have to really look at this, and it's government level to look at what we can do. I always use the example of Tusla, when people who were adopted tried to get access to their records, everything was blacked out. Do you remember all those pages were blacked out? And Roderick O'Gorman had a statutory instrument to change the law so that would no longer happen. That's GDPR, that's changing at national level. So it's really important. Anyway, the next speaker is